The lawyer's letter sits on my kitchen table like a snake coiled to strike. Daniel actually did it. After 8 years of marriage, after everything we've built together, he's throwing it all away over one tiny mistake. One night that shouldn't have mattered this much. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. I stare at the official letterhead, my hands shaking as I read the words dissolution of marriage and custody arrangements. This can't be happening, not over something so meaningless, so forgettable. But apparently, my husband doesn't see it that way. The whole mess started 3 weeks ago on my 32nd birthday. I should have been celebrating, feeling loved and appreciated. Instead, I was sitting at Romano's bar, watching Daniel check his phone for the 5th time in 10 minutes. "Honey, can you put that away? It's my birthday dinner," I said, trying to keep the irritation out of my voice. Our friends were watching, and I didn't want to seem like a nagging wife. "Sorry, Lise. Big client presentation tomorrow. Johnson's breathing down my neck about the quarterly reports." Daniel slipped his phone into his jacket pocket, but I could see his fingers twitching toward it. "The Johnson account again?" My sister Gwen rolled her eyes dramatically. "Daniel, you work too hard. Lysandra deserves better than competing with spreadsheets on her special day." I felt a flush of gratitude toward Gwen. At least someone understood how neglected I'd been feeling lately. Daniel worked 60-hour weeks at the accounting firm, came home exhausted, and barely had energy for Sophie, let alone me. "It's fine," I lied, forcing a smile. "I know work is important." But it wasn't fine. When was the last time Daniel had really looked at me? When had he last planned something romantic, something that showed he still saw me as more than just Sophie's mum and the woman who did his laundry? The birthday cake arrived with sparklers instead of candles. Daniel had forgotten to tell them I wanted the traditional candles like every year before. It was a small thing, but it felt like another sign that he wasn't really present in our life anymore. "Make a wish, sis," Gwen cheered, taking photos with her phone. I closed my eyes and wished for something to change, for Daniel to remember why he fell in love with me, for someone to make me feel special again. When I opened my eyes, Colin Pierce was standing by our table. "Lysandra, wow, you look incredible." Colin's smile was the same one that had made my heart race 10 years ago when we dated. He looked good too, still tall and lean, with those green eyes that always seemed to see right through me. "Colin, what are you doing here?" I stood up to hug him, very aware of how his arms lingered around my waist. "Just grabbing dinner with some work buddies. Heard it was your birthday from the waitress." His eyes swept over my red dress, the one Daniel had barely noticed when I'd asked if he liked it. 32 looks good on you." Daniel stood up stiffly, extending his hand. "Colin, been a while." "Daniel, right, the accountant." Colin's handshake was firm, confident. "Still crunching numbers?" "Someone has to pay the bills," Daniel replied, but there was an edge to his voice I rarely heard. "Mind if I buy the birthday girl a drink, for old time's sake?" I looked at Daniel, expecting him to object, to claim his territory. Instead, he glanced at his phone again. "Actually, I should probably head home. Early morning tomorrow." Daniel kissed my cheek quickly. "You stay, have fun with your friends. I'll get Sophie from Mum's." And just like that, my husband walked out of my birthday party. "Wow," Colin said, sliding into Daniel's abandoned chair. "If I had a wife who looked like you, I'd never leave her side at a party." The compliment hit me like warm honey. When was the last time Daniel had said something like that? When had he last made me feel desired instead of just convenient? "He's going through a stressful time at work." I found myself defending him, even as anger bubbled in my chest. "There's always going to be stress, Lise. The question is whether your partner makes you a priority anyway." Colin signaled the bartender. "Champagne for the birthday girl, the good stuff." Gwen leaned over, her voice low but excited. Oh my God, he's still so hot. And look how he's looking at you. I knew I should leave, should go home to my husband and daughter and responsible adult life. But Colin was looking at me like I was the most fascinating woman in the room, and it had been so long since anyone made me feel that way. One drink, I told myself. What could it hurt? 3 hours and several drinks later, I was laughing harder than I had in months. Colin remembered everything about me. How I liked my cocktails, my favorite music, the way I wrinkled my nose when I was thinking hard about something. Remember that weekend we drove to the coast? Colin's hand was on my knee now, his thumb tracing small circles through my dress. You made me pull over every 5 miles to take pictures of wildflowers. I was 22 and thought I was going to be a nature photographer, I laughed, but the memory made my chest tight. That girl felt so far away now. When had I stopped taking pictures? When had I stopped noticing wildflowers? You were passionate about everything back then. Still are, I bet. His green eyes were intense, focused entirely on me. Daniel's an idiot for leaving you here alone. The words hit exactly where they were meant to. He's not an idiot. He's just practical, responsible. Boring. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. Colin's hand moved higher on my leg. You deserve someone who appreciates what he has. My phone buzzed. A text from Daniel. Home safe. Sophie's asleep. Don't stay out too late. Not, happy birthday, beautiful. Not, wish I was there with you. Just a practical status update, like I was his business partner instead of his wife. You know what? I drained my martini and looked directly into Colin's eyes. You're absolutely right. I should have gone home, should have called an Uber, kissed Daniel's sleeping forehead, and slipped into bed beside my husband like a good wife. Instead, I found myself in Colin's car, my hand on his thigh, as he drove toward his apartment. Are you sure about this? Colin asked, but his hand was already tangling in my hair as we sat in his parking lot. I'm sure I'm tired of being taken for granted, I whispered against his lips. His apartment was exactly what I expected, modern, minimalist, no family photos or children's drawings on the refrigerator. No evidence of the complicated, messy life I'd built with Daniel. Here, I could just be Lysandra again. Not Mom, not the responsible wife who remembered to pay bills and schedule dentist appointments. Colin poured wine while I looked out at the city lights. You're thinking too much, he said, coming up behind me. I always think too much. Daniel says it's my worst habit. Daniel says a lot of things. Colin's hands were on my shoulders, warm and sure. When's the last time he told you that you were beautiful? I tried to remember. Our anniversary dinner? Sophie's school play? The memory felt distant, faded. That's what I thought. Colin turned me around to face him. You're gorgeous, Lys. You're smart and funny, and any man would be lucky to have you looking at him the way you're looking at me right now. When he kissed me, it felt like coming alive again, like remembering who I used to be before I became half of a couple that barely talked anymore. I texted Daniel that I was staying at Gwen's, another small lie in what was becoming a much bigger one. Colin's hands were reverent as he undressed me, telling me how perfect I was, how long he'd thought about this moment. When was the last time Daniel had touched me like I was something precious instead of just familiar? Afterward, as I lay in Colin's arms, I felt more like myself than I had in years. I forgot how good this could feel, I admitted, being with someone who actually wants you. Colin's fingers traced patterns on my bare shoulder. You deserve that every day, not just on your birthday. My phone buzzed with another text from Daniel. Working early tomorrow. Probably gone before you're up. Love you. Love you. 2 words that felt like an obligation instead of a promise. He doesn't even know what he's losing, Colin murmured, reading over my shoulder. I turned off my phone and pulled Colin closer. For once, I wasn't going to think about tomorrow. I woke up at sunrise, panic flooding through me as I remembered where I was. Colin was still asleep, his arm heavy across my waist. In the morning light, everything felt different, sordid instead of romantic. What had I done? I slipped out of bed quietly, gathering my clothes from the floor. My red dress looked wrinkled and cheap in the harsh daylight. The woman who had worn it last night felt like a stranger. Leaving so soon? Colin's voice was rough with sleep. I have to get home. Sophie will be up soon, and Daniel will never know. Colin sat up, completely comfortable with his nakedness in a way that made me feel exposed. This can be our secret, Lys. Something just for us. Our secret. The words should have felt romantic, but instead they sat heavy in my stomach. I had secrets from my husband now. I was the kind of woman who cheated on her family. I should go. Colin got up and kissed me goodbye, long and thorough. Call me, he said against my lips. This doesn't have to be a one-time thing. I drove home in yesterday's clothes, practicing what I'd say to Daniel. But when I walked into our kitchen, he was already gone. A note on the counter. Coffee's made. See you tonight. D. No questions about where I'd been or why I looked like I'd slept in my car. Part of me was relieved, but a smaller, uglier part was disappointed. Wouldn't a man who really loved his wife notice when she came home at 7 a.m. in last night's dress? I was pouring coffee when I heard Colin's voice behind me. Forget something. I spun around, heart hammering. He was standing in my kitchen doorway, holding his leather jacket. What are you doing here? You left this in my car. Thought you might need it. He held up my purse, but his eyes were scanning our kitchen, taking in Sophie's artwork on the refrigerator, Daniel's reading glasses on the counter. Thank you. You should go. I took my purse with shaking hands. Nice place. Very domestic. Colin's tone was amused, like he was looking at a museum exhibit. This the life you chose over me? Colin, please. My daughter could come downstairs any minute. Relax. I'm not going to cause a scene. He stepped closer, backing me against the counter. But last night was incredible, Lys. Tell me you felt it too. I had felt it. That was the problem. It was a mistake. I was drunk and upset and honest for the first time in years. His hand cupped my face. You can't tell me you're happy here, playing house with a man who doesn't even see you. Before I could answer, I heard Daniel's key in the front door. Shit! Colin grabbed his jacket from the chair where he'd draped it. Back door? Through the kitchen. Hurry. Colin kissed me quickly, roughly. This isn't over, he whispered, then slipped out the back door, just as Daniel's footsteps echoed in the hallway. Lys, you home? Daniel appeared in the kitchen doorway, looking tired but unsurprised to see me in yesterday's clothes. How was girls' night? Fine. Good. Gwen says hi. The lies came easier than they should have. Daniel nodded, already distracted by something on his phone. I forgot my laptop. Big presentation this morning. He grabbed his computer bag from the counter, kissed my forehead absently, and was gone again. He never even asked why I was still in my party dress at 7:30 a.m. After he left, I found Colin's jacket draped over one of our kitchen chairs. For 3 days, I managed to convince myself it had never happened. Colin's jacket went into a bag in my closet, and I threw myself into normal life with desperate energy. I made Daniel's favorite dinner, helped Sophie with her homework, even initiated sex for the first time in months. But Daniel was distracted during dinner, checking his phone between bites. During homework time, he was on a work call in his office. And when I reached for him in bed, he was already half asleep, responding more out of habit than desire. Everything okay? He asked afterward, but he was already turning away, reaching for his phone to check his morning alarms. Fine, I lied. Just missed you. Missed me? I'm right here. But he wasn't, not really. Even when Daniel was physically present, part of him was always at the office, thinking about clients and deadlines and quarterly reports. Colin texted me Tuesday morning. Can't stop thinking about you. Meet me for lunch? I deleted the message without responding, but the words stayed with me all day. Someone was thinking about me. Someone wanted to see me, to be with me, to make me feel like I mattered. Wednesday brought another text. Your husband doesn't deserve you. You know that, right? I should have blocked his number. Instead, I found myself typing back, it's complicated. It doesn't have to be. One coffee as friends. I can't. You can't, or you won't. The distinction felt important, though I couldn't say why. Thursday evening, Daniel came home 2 hours late without calling. Dinner was cold, Sophie was cranky from waiting, and I was furious. You could have texted, I said as he reheated his plate in the microwave. Sorry, Johnson called an emergency meeting right as I was leaving. Daniel looked genuinely apologetic, but it was the same apology I'd heard dozens of times before. It's always Johnson. It's always an emergency. I kept my voice low because Sophie was in the next room, but anger was building in my chest like steam in a kettle. Liz, you know I don't have a choice. This promotion... There's always going to be another promotion, Daniel. Another client, another deadline, another reason why work comes first. Daniel set down his fork and looked at me. Really looked, for the first time in days. That's not fair. Everything I do is for this family. No, everything you do is for your career. There's a difference. Where is this coming from? You've never complained about my work schedule before. But that wasn't true. I'd complained plenty, in small ways that he'd learned to ignore. Comments about missing dinner, jokes about being a single parent, sighs when his phone rang during Sophie's bedtime stories. He'd just stopped hearing them. Maybe I'm tired of competing with your job for your attention. You're not competing with anything. You're my wife. The word felt hollow. Wife, like a job title instead of a relationship. Colin would never speak to me like I was an obligation he had to manage. When's the last time we went on a date? Just the two of us? Daniel was quiet for a long moment. We went to dinner for your birthday. With 6 other people, and you left early. I explained that. The Johnson presentation. It's always something. The words came out louder than I intended. When's the last time you told me I was beautiful? When's the last time you seemed happy to see me when you came home? Daniel looked genuinely confused, like I was speaking a foreign language. Liz, I don't understand what you want from me. I work hard to provide for us. I come home every night. I love you and Sophie more than anything. But you don't act like it. The words hung between us like an accusation. I don't know what that means. And that was the problem. Daniel had no idea that I was drowning in our marriage. No idea that I felt invisible, taken for granted, like a piece of furniture he'd grown so used to, he'd stopped seeing it entirely. My phone buzzed. A text from Colin. Thinking of you. Hope you're having a better day than you deserve in that house. I turned the phone face down, but not before Daniel noticed. Who's texting you this late? Gwen. Girl stuff. Another lie, but Daniel just nodded and went back to his dinner. He didn't ask what kind of girl stuff. Didn't seem curious about my life outside our house at all. Colin would have asked. Colin would have wanted to know everything. That night, I lay in bed listening to Daniel's steady breathing and felt more alone than I had in years. My husband was 18 inches away, but he might as well have been on another planet. I picked up my phone and typed, "You're right, I do deserve better." Colin's response came immediately. "Meet me tomorrow. Let me show you how you should be treated." I stared at the message for a long time before typing back, "Where?" The coffee shop Colin chose was across town, somewhere Daniel would never go. I told myself I was just meeting an old friend, that it didn't mean anything. But I changed clothes 3 times and put on makeup like I was going on a date. Colin was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth with 2 lattes waiting. He stood when he saw me, kissing my cheek like we did this all the time. "You look beautiful," he said, and the compliment hit me like sunshine after a long winter. "Thank you." I slid into the booth across from him, trying to ignore how my heart was racing. "How are things at home?" "Fine, good, the same." I wrapped my hands around my latte, using the warmth to steady myself. That bad, huh? Colin's smile was knowing. What did Daniel do now? He didn't do anything. That's the problem. The words spilled out before I could stop them. He comes home, eats dinner, watches TV, goes to bed. We're like roommates who happen to share a mortgage. That's no way to live. Colin reached across the table and covered my hand with his. You're too vibrant, too alive to waste away in a marriage like that. It's not that simple. We have Sophie to think about and the house and what about what you need? What about your happiness? It was a question Daniel hadn't asked me in years, maybe ever. I used to think I was happy, I admitted, but lately I feel like I'm disappearing, like I'm just going through the motions of someone else's life. You don't have to disappear. Colin's thumb stroked across my knuckles. You could remember who you really are, who you were with me. That was 10 years ago. We're different people now. Are we? Because sitting here with you feels exactly like it used to. Natural. Right. It did feel right, in a way that scared me. Easy and exciting and alive, in a way my marriage hadn't felt in years. I should go. But I didn't move to leave. Should. What do you want to do, Lys? I wanted to lean across the table and kiss him. I wanted to forget about Daniel and Sophie and responsibilities and just feel good for once. I wanted to matter to someone again. I started, then stopped. It doesn't matter what I want. It's the only thing that matters. Colin walked me to my car, his hand warm on the small of my back. I meant what I said the other night. This doesn't have to be a one-time thing. We could see each other. Carefully. Quietly. You're talking about an affair. I'm talking about you being happy, about someone treating you the way you deserve to be treated. He backed me against my car door, his body close enough that I could smell his cologne. Tell me you haven't thought about it. I had thought about it, constantly. The memory of that night had been playing on repeat in my mind, making it impossible to focus on anything else. Think about it, Colin said, kissing my forehead softly. You deserve to feel alive again. I drove home in a daze, Colin's words echoing in my head. You deserve to feel alive again. When was the last time I'd felt truly alive? When was the last time someone had made me feel like I was worth pursuing? Daniel was in his office when I got home, door closed, on another conference call. Sophie was at her friend Emma's house. The house felt empty and quiet, like a museum of a life I used to live. I found myself standing in front of our wedding photos in the hallway. Daniel and I looked so young, so happy. He was looking at me in those pictures, like I was the most important thing in his world. When had he stopped looking at me that way? My phone buzzed. Colin. Thank you for today. You made my whole week. Daniel's office door opened. Liz, you home? I quickly deleted Colin's message. In the hallway. Daniel appeared, looking tired and distracted. How was lunch with the girls? I told him I was having lunch with friends from work. Another lie to add to the growing pile. Good, fine. How was your day? Busy. Johnson's being impossible about the quarterly projections. Daniel rubbed his temples. I might have to work this weekend. This weekend? Sophie has her soccer game Saturday. I know. I'll try to make it, but if Johnson calls another emergency meeting... He shrugged helplessly. You promised her you'd be there. I'll do my best. You know that. But his best lately meant work came first and we got whatever was left over. Sophie was 6 years old. She wouldn't understand why Daddy's job was more important than watching her score goals. Maybe you should tell Johnson that your family needs you sometimes too. Daniel's face tightened. That's not how it works, Lys. I can't just tell my biggest client that I'm unavailable because of a kid's soccer game. Why not? Other fathers do. Other fathers don't have the opportunities I have. This promotion could change everything for us. What if I don't want everything to change? What if I want my husband to be present for the life we already have? Daniel stared at me like I was speaking nonsense. I am present. I'm here every night. Your body is here. Your mind is always at the office. That's not fair, isn't it? When's the last time you asked me how my day was and actually listened to the answer? When's the last time you seemed interested in anything about me that didn't relate to managing the household? Daniel was quiet for a long moment. I don't know what you want me to say. I want you to say that I matter, that our marriage matters, that you still see me as more than just Sophie's mother and the woman who does your laundry. Of course you matter. You're my wife. There was that word again, wife, like a job description instead of a love story. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Colin, probably. Daniel glanced at it, then back at me. You've been getting a lot of texts lately. Have I? I kept my voice casual. The other night at dinner. Just now. Yesterday when we were watching TV. Daniel's eyes were sharper than usual. New friends from work? Just the usual people. The lie felt thick in my throat. Daniel nodded slowly. Right. The usual people. That night, he was quieter than normal. During dinner, during Sophie's bath time, during our usual evening routine of parallel living, I caught him watching me several times, like he was trying to solve a puzzle. Everything okay? I asked as we got ready for bed. Fine. Just thinking about work. But something had shifted. Daniel was paying attention now, in a way that made my skin feel tight. I'd wanted him to notice me, but not like this. Not with suspicion instead of love. I lay awake long after Daniel fell asleep, staring at the ceiling and thinking about Colin's offer. An affair. The word felt both terrifying and thrilling. I'd never been the kind of woman who cheated, but I'd never been this lonely in my own marriage before either. You deserve to feel alive again. Maybe Colin was right. Maybe I did. The confrontation came on a Tuesday morning, 2 weeks after my coffee date with Colin. I was getting ready for work when Daniel appeared in the bathroom doorway, holding a stack of papers. We need to talk. Something in his voice made my stomach drop. About what? About Colin Pierce. About where you really were on your birthday. About the lies you've been telling me. The papers in his hand looked official, organized. Phone records, I realized with growing horror. Bank statements, printouts of text messages. Daniel, I can explain. Can you? Because I'd love to hear how you explain this. He held up a photo printed from our security camera. Me, coming home at 7 a.m. in my birthday dress, looking guilty and disheveled. You've been spying on me? I've been trying to understand why my wife has been acting like a stranger, why she's been getting mysterious texts and lying about where she's been. Daniel's voice was steady, controlled, but I could see the hurt in his eyes. Turns out I didn't have to look very hard. He spread the papers on our bathroom counter like evidence in a trial. Phone records showing dozens of calls and texts to Colin's number. Credit card statements showing charges at restaurants and bars I'd never mentioned. Security camera footage, time-stamped with my comings and goings. You had an affair. It wasn't a question. It wasn't an affair. It was one night, one mistake. One night? Daniel laughed bitterly. Liz, I have 2 weeks of phone records here, restaurant receipts, hotel charges. Hotel charges. I'd forgotten about the afternoon last week when Colin had surprised me with a room downtown. When I'd told Daniel I was shopping with Gwen. How long have you been watching me? Since the night you came home in your party dress with another man's jacket in our kitchen. Daniel's composure cracked slightly. Did you really think I wouldn't notice? That I was so buried in work I'd miss my wife having an affair? You were buried in work. You were always buried in work. When's the last time you looked at me, really looked at me, before you started playing detective? Don't you dare turn this around on me. Daniel's voice rose for the first time. I work hard for this family. I come home every night. I've never so much as looked at another woman in 8 years of marriage. You don't look at me either. So you decided to find someone who would? Is that your excuse? I wanted to explain about feeling invisible, about being lonely in our marriage, about needing to feel desired and appreciated. But faced with the evidence of my betrayal, laid out so clinically, the words felt pathetic. It just happened. I was drunk and upset, and you chose to betray our marriage. You chose to lie to me for weeks. You chose to bring him into our home where our daughter sleeps. Daniel's hands were shaking as he gathered up the papers. Do you have any idea what this feels like? To realize that the person you trusted most in the world has been living a double life. Daniel, please, it's over. I ended it. We can work through this. When? When did you end it? He pulled out his phone, scrolled to a screenshot of text messages. Because according to this, you were planning to see him again yesterday. Colin had texted asking to meet up, and I'd responded that I would try. I'd been planning to cancel, to end things properly. But I'd never gotten the chance. I was going to tell him it was over. By meeting him at another hotel? No, I was going to tell him I couldn't see him anymore. The same way you told me you were having lunch with girlfriends when you were really meeting your ex-boyfriend. Each question was a scalpel, cutting away my excuses and justifications until there was nothing left but the ugly truth. I had cheated, I had lied, I had betrayed the man who loved me and trusted me. What do you want me to say? That I'm sorry? I am sorry. I'm so sorry, Daniel. Sorry you did it, or sorry you got caught. The question hung between us like a blade, and the honest answer, that I was mostly sorry I got caught, must have shown on my face because Daniel's expression went cold. That's what I thought. He walked toward our bedroom, and I followed, panic rising in my throat. Where are you going? To pack a bag. I'm staying at Mark's for a while. Daniel, no, please, we can fix this. We can go to counseling. We can what? Pretend this never happened? Pretend I don't know that my wife has been fucking her ex-boyfriend in hotel rooms while I was at work? The crude language was so unlike Daniel that it hit me like a slap. This calm, controlled man was falling apart, and I had done that to him. It wasn't like that. What was it like, Lise? Help me understand, because from where I'm standing, it looks like you decided our marriage wasn't enough for you, so you went looking for something better. I wasn't looking for anything. It just happened. Bullshit. Affairs don't just happen. You made a choice. 100 choices. Every time you texted him, every time you lied to me, every time you met him somewhere. Daniel was throwing clothes into a suitcase now, his movements sharp and angry. You chose him over us. That's not true. I love you. I love our family. You have a funny way of showing it. I watched my husband pack his things, and the reality of what I'd done finally hit me. I was losing him. I was losing everything we'd built together over one stupid, selfish mistake. Please don't leave. Think about Sophie. Daniel stopped packing and turned to face me. I am thinking about Sophie. I'm thinking about what kind of example we're setting for her. What kind of marriage we're modeling. So we'll be better. We'll fix this. How, Lise? How do we fix this? How do I ever trust you again? How do I stop wondering where you really are when you say you're at the store? How do I stop seeing him in our bed every time I look at you? I didn't have an answer. The damage felt too big, too deep to repair. Daniel zipped his suitcase and picked it up. I'll be back tomorrow to get more things when you're at work. We need to figure out how to tell Sophie. Daniel, wait! But he was already walking down the stairs, already leaving me alone in the wreckage of our marriage. I heard his car start in the driveway and realized that this was really happening. My husband was gone. My marriage was over. And it was entirely my fault. The divorce papers arrived 3 weeks later, delivered by a process server who rang our doorbell at 8 a.m. on a Saturday. Sophie was eating cereal at the kitchen table when the stranger handed me the manila envelope. Mommy, who was that man? Just someone from Daddy's work, sweetheart. Another lie to add to the collection that was slowly poisoning everything I touched. Daniel had been staying at his brother Mark's house, coming by to see Sophie but barely speaking to me. He'd been polite, civil, but distant in a way that hurt worse than anger would have. Like I was a stranger he was forced to do business with. I opened the envelope with shaking hands while Sophie finished her breakfast. The legal language was formal and cold, but the message was clear. Daniel wanted everything. The house, primary custody of Sophie, spousal support. He was claiming adultery as grounds for divorce, and apparently that meant something in our state. "He can't do this," I said to my sister Gwen when she came over that afternoon. "He can't just take Sophie away from me." "Did you really think he'd just forgive and forget?" Gwen was less sympathetic than she'd been before, when she thought this was all about Daniel being inattentive. The reality of the affair had sobered her. "You cheated, Lise. You lied to him for weeks. It was a mistake. People make mistakes. People make mistakes like forgetting to pay a bill or missing an anniversary. You had an affair. You brought another man into your house where your daughter lives." Gwen's voice was sharp with disapproval. "What did you think would happen?" "I thought he'd fight for our marriage. I thought he'd want to work it out." "Why would he fight for someone who didn't fight for him?" The question stung because it was true. I hadn't fought for my marriage. I'd been so focused on feeling neglected and unappreciated that I'd never tried to fix the problems. I'd just looked for someone else to make me feel better. My mother was more supportive when I called her, but even she seemed disappointed. "Oh, honey, what were you thinking?" "I wasn't thinking. I was lonely and stupid and now you're getting divorced." Mom's sigh carried across the phone line. "What about Sophie? What about the house?" "Daniel wants everything. He's claiming I'm an unfit mother." "Are you?" The question hit me like a physical blow. "Mom, I'm sorry, but I have to ask. You made some very poor choices, Lysandra. Choices that affect your daughter." Everyone was against me. Even my own family was taking Daniel's side, like I was some kind of monster instead of a woman who'd made a mistake. The custody evaluation was scheduled for the following month. Daniel's lawyer had requested it, claiming that my pattern of deception and poor judgment made me unsuitable as a primary caregiver. I hired my own lawyer, but she wasn't optimistic. "Adultery cases are tricky," she explained during our first meeting, "especially when there's evidence of the affair taking place in the family home. Judges don't like that. It was one time, in our house, I mean. It was mostly hotels and—" I stopped, realizing how that sounded. "Mrs. Merrow, I need you to understand something. Your husband has documented evidence of your affair. Phone records, credit card statements, security camera footage. He's built a very strong case that you prioritize this relationship over your family responsibilities. That's not true. Isn't it? You lied to him repeatedly. You spent family money on hotel rooms. You brought your affair partner to your home, where your 6-year-old daughter lives." The lawyer's tone was matter-of-fact, but each word felt like a hammer blow. From a legal standpoint, this is going to be very difficult to defend. The custody evaluator was a stern woman named Dr. Patricia Mills, who interviewed both Daniel and me separately, then observed us with Sophie. Daniel's interview went well, I could tell. He was calm, prepared, reasonable. He spoke about his commitment to providing stability for Sophie, about his concerns regarding my judgment and trustworthiness. My interview was a disaster. I tried to explain about feeling neglected in my marriage, about Daniel's work schedule, about how the affair was a symptom of larger problems between us, but every excuse I offered made me sound more selfish, more willing to blame others for my choices. "Mrs. Merrow," Dr. Mills interrupted at one point, "do you take responsibility for your decision to have an extramarital affair?" "Of course I do, but you have to understand the context. The context doesn't change the fact that you chose to betray your husband's trust and expose your daughter to instability in the home." "I never exposed Sophie to anything. She doesn't know about any of this." "She knows her parents are getting divorced. She knows her father has moved out of the family home. She knows something is very wrong, even if she doesn't understand the details." Dr. Mills made notes on her clipboard. Children are more perceptive than adults give them credit for. The observation session with Sophie was even worse. My daughter was clingy and anxious, asking repeatedly when Daddy was coming home. She acted out during our time together, throwing a tantrum when I tried to redirect her from a game she was playing. "I want Daddy," she screamed. "I want to go to Uncle Mark's house." Daniel's session with Sophie was completely different. She was calm, happy, engaged. They played together naturally, and when it was time to go, she hugged him tight and asked if she could come with him. "Soon, sweetheart," Daniel promised, and I realized he already knew how this was going to end. The final court hearing was held on a grey October morning, 3 months after that terrible night when Daniel found Colin's jacket in our kitchen. I sat with my lawyer at one table, while Daniel sat with his at another, and we listened to a judge decide the fate of our family. Dr. Mills testified first, recommending that primary custody be awarded to Daniel based on his stability, consistency, and commitment to the child's best interests. She noted my pattern of deception and poor judgment as factors that made me a less suitable primary caregiver. Daniel's lawyer presented the evidence methodically: phone records, hotel receipts, security camera footage, text message screenshots. A comprehensive timeline of my affair that made it impossible to claim it was just a momentary lapse in judgment. My lawyer did her best, arguing that I was a loving mother who had made a mistake, that my relationship with Sophie was strong and important, but the evidence was overwhelming. When it was over, the judge awarded Daniel primary physical custody of Sophie, the family home, and spousal support. I was granted supervised visitation every other weekend and 1 evening per week. The court finds that Mrs. Merrow's conduct demonstrates a pattern of deception and prioritizing personal desires over family responsibilities, the judge explained. While the court does not doubt her love for her daughter, the evidence suggests that Mr. Merrow can provide a more stable environment. I walked out of that courtroom having lost everything that mattered to me: my husband, my daughter, my home, my reputation. All for what? A few weeks of feeling desired by a man who disappeared the moment things got complicated. Colin had stopped returning my calls weeks ago, once he realized Daniel knew about us. The excitement and passion I'd thought was worth risking everything for had evaporated the moment it became inconvenient for him. I moved into a small apartment across town, furnished with whatever furniture Daniel let me take from our house. Every other weekend, Sophie came to stay with me, but the visits were awkward and strained. She missed her father, her room, her normal life. I was a disruption to the routine she'd found comfort in after our family fell apart. "When are you and Daddy getting back together?" she asked during one visit, and I had to explain again that we weren't, that this was our life now. "But I want us to be a family again." "I know, sweetheart. I want that too." But it was too late for wanting. I'd destroyed our family with my selfishness, and no amount of regret could rebuild what I'd torn down. Daniel moved on with quiet dignity. He focused on Sophie, on his work, on building a stable life for them both. He was polite when we had to interact, but there was nothing left of the man who had once loved me. I'd killed that love as surely as if I'd put a knife through his heart. 6 months after our divorce was finalized, I heard through mutual friends that Daniel was dating someone new, a teacher at Sophie's school, someone who understood the importance of family and commitment, someone who would never risk everything for a few moments of selfish pleasure. I wanted to be angry, to feel betrayed that he was moving on so quickly. But mostly I felt empty, hollow, like I was watching someone else's life from the outside, someone who had made better choices and deserved better outcomes. The woman I'd been before, the one who'd felt neglected and taken for granted, seemed like a stranger now. I'd thought I was fighting for my happiness, for my right to feel alive and desired, but I'd really been destroying the only thing that had ever made me truly happy: my family. Some mistakes you can recover from, some choices can be undone, but some decisions change everything, and you have to live with the consequences forever. I was 32 years old, divorced, living alone in a studio apartment, seeing my daughter 4 days a month. This was the life I'd chosen when I chose Colin over Daniel. When I chose excitement over stability, passion over commitment, my desires over my family's well-being. It was exactly what I deserved. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next story. Write in the comments from which city you are watching.